Hello guys, and welcome to a new video today by me, Vulcan. Today I'm going to bring you guys a sort of getting started tutorial. This of course is going to be specific to the early access, and at a later date I'll do a more in-depth tutorial once the game fully comes out. But for now I wanted to provide sort of like a material that you guys could watch while you're either like installing the game or before you choose to get the game, in order to sort of like take you through the steps that you might want to do before you really get deep into like the multiplayer, for example, which is going to be like sort of the main stage of the early access preview, or you know, if you're a single player person, then messing around with the skirmish. Now the first thing that I would recommend you do once you load up WARNO is just go straight to the solo. Go to the skirmish and set up yourself a game against the AI. I would set up like a very easy AI. You can click on this button here in order to choose your difficulty. Just go with the easiest AI, and then underneath where it says your name, just select the one and only deck or battle group that will be there, which will be the 97th Guards Tank Division official deck if you're on the red side, or if you want to switch you can press this button. I think you start by default on the blue side, and you can choose the 3rd Armored official deck on this side. Now this is like the default deck that comes with the game. It's not always the best and most optimized deck, but it's a great one for getting started and just trying out things. And this skirmish battle that you're about to play doesn't really matter that much. The main reason that you'll be jumping into it is to mess around with your settings, get familiar with the controls, and then you can play another skirmish afterwards against a more hard AI or whatever. So yeah, with that set up, just set up a 1v1. Select whatever map. I just recommend Death Row because it's a small 1v1 map and therefore you won't get too overwhelmed. Nothing else here really matters. At the start it will all be default, and once you've done that, jump on in. So you've loaded in the game. This is what will pop up, and it might be all a little bit overwhelming, but let me just tell you first of all the objective of the game. It's basically to capture these sectors on the map. Each sector has its own point value, and it's basically the amount you control versus the amount the enemy control. You get either like a +1 or a +2. So for example, if I was to control Echo and the opponents were just holding Alpha and we were holding our home sector here, then that would mean that we're at +2 advantage because they have 2 points, our home sector's worth 2 points, and Echo's worth 2 points. But we control these two, so we will have 4 points, they will have 2, and therefore we get a +2 in team score. And in order to win, you need to get your team score to 2,000 points, which is displayed here. So this is the score value to reach to win. And yeah, that's how you win the game. So it's very important that you do capture these sectors, and you have to place a command unit in your main sector in order to start the game to begin with. Just a quick note about camera controls. You can move your camera around by pressing W, A, S, and D. And then more important than that, you can use your scroll wheel. So scrolling in and out on your scroll wheel will zoom, but if you hold down your scroll wheel and then move your mouse in different directions, you can change the elevation and rotation of the camera. So I hold down the middle mouse button and I'm moving my mouse to the left and right to turn it around, and then if I move it up and down, I can do elevation. The closer you are to the ground, the more you can look up, so bear that in mind as well. Just helpful for taking in the scenery and of course getting the correct strategic perspective. Now, a command unit is represented by this sort of circle with a star next to a unit. So in this case, the M577 CPC. There is also a tank called the M1A1 Abrams CP here in the tank tab, and there might be one in the infantry tab as well. You can see the engineer leaders. All of these units with the circle and the star can capture sectors. So you're going to want to like put one of these down at the start in order to capture your main sector, and then you're going to want to put them in these other sectors in order to capture them. You can drive around units that are capturing a sector while you're in them. It will still do the same thing. So if you need to like run away, then that's fine. But if you move out of the sector, you will lose control of it, so bear that in mind. Anyway, with that all in mind, let me just quickly go over the UI so you understand what else you're looking at here. In the top left, you have your battle group options. This is where you buy your unit. So I've already bought in an engineer leader here. On the icon card, you've got the nation in the top left. Top right is the amount they cost. Then you have the experience. The blue sort of triangle here is showing how good a unit is, like general quality of the unit. And then in the bottom left is the number of those units you have available. So if I click on the hemp here, it's going to reduce that because I've selected it. And if I put it down, then it's there. If I right click the unit, I can put it back. This number next to the battle group in the top left is the amount of command points you have. Now this is the amount of points a unit costs. So this here costs 245 points. So if I select it, it's going to take 245 points away from my command points. I can just right click if I want to cancel that. It'll put it back in the deck. The plus number next to it is our income. Once we start the game, this will start to tick down from 60. When it reaches 0, we get another 260 points added to our command points. That's like our income throughout the game that helps us buy new units. On the right of that, you have the thing that I was kind of explaining at the start, which is the command zones and values. I'd recommend you just kind of hover over this and read it in order to understand it a little bit better. But basically, the left one is how many points you have. The middle one is how many points the enemy have. And then the far right number is how many points are overall on the map. So you can see how far off, like 50-50 you are. Then you have like the score bars at the top with the amount of points you're trying to reach. If you click on this little button, it will bring down the player list, but not really very important for a single player. You've got your time controls on the right, and then you have your warning order here, which sort of tells you all of the lobby settings. You can just click close on that. You can bring it back up with this later on, with this button down here if you need to. Then you got your minimap, and you got these extra buttons down here. One of them is for the warning order. One of them is if you want to have orders always on. So if I just like right click move here, the engineer leader will move to that location. But if I have this on, which I currently do, then it will show the order permanently. And then if I turn that off, it will not show the order. And if I hold shift, what it will do is bring up the order again. And so I can kind of like unclutter my UI if you don't like having the orders on all the time. You do have your orders when you select on a unit in the bottom right. There's smart orders. Seize is used for units in order to kind of like capture an area. So it gives you a little circle and your units will go and try and attack that area and sort of clear it out. Hold position does the same, but around the unit itself. Then you've got defensive fire, which is firing at an area used for artillery mainly. It will attack any unit in the area. Then you've got counter battery, which will tell units, artillery units more specifically, to automatically attack enemy artillery units across the map. Then you've got fire at will, which tells your artillery to basically do its own thing and target whatever it sees, basically. Then you've got more orders in the bottom right here. So I'm just going to deploy a unit such as the M1A1 Abrams. And this will give us a few orders here that we can look at. So we've got the hunt order, which is attack move. So if we click that and left click, then it will give an attack move order. Quick hunt is a fast move order. So move fast, what it does is it will, once the game starts, prioritize using roads to get to a location, and units move faster on roads. Quick hunt is basically attack move, but on roads. So fast move, it will move, and then it will just ignore any units firing at it. It will just carry on where it's going. It might fire back, but it will fire on the move, which will make it less accurate. So quick hunt, what it does is it will stop to attack any units it's being fired at by, and also it will probably turn its front armor towards that unit automatically, making it less vulnerable to side shots. So definitely worth using quick hunt. Reverse is self-explanatory. Useful for keeping front armor facing in the right direction. And then you have return fire, which basically tells your unit to hold fire until it is fired upon or revealed. Then you have fire position, which basically tells a unit to fire at a specific place. And then you have smoke position, which is used for smoke launchers on vehicles and also artillery with smoke rounds. So like the M109, for example, can use smoke rounds instead of HE rounds in order to like smoke off an area if you so wanted to. Now, there is a couple useful extra tools down here. You've got the line of sight tool. This line of sight tool shows you the range from your units and from your selected unit if you click this on. And it also shows you the facing of armor. So you can see this cone in front of the M1, A2, and if I just like kind of click back, it like draws that out for you, as you can see. So you can tell if you're being shot in the front, which is important because on a tank like this, the front armor is the highest. Don't worry about the rest of that unit card yet, it's confusing. So yeah, that is basically what you want to do. You want to keep your front armor facing and use the commands to do that. Just a side note, when unselected, the line of sight tool can be also brought up by pressing C, and will show line of sight from your mouse anywhere on the map. You can also hover over buildings to see their line of sight, as well as units, which will also bring up the front armor cone as well. Once the game has started, you can also click the line of sight tool whilst having a unit selected to get the enemy stealth display up. What this allows you to do is add rings to the line of sight tool that indicate how far your unit can see. So these rings that I've currently got selected are how far my tank can see units in the open. So something with exceptional stealth could sneak all the way up to 1,131 meters in front of my M1A1 and it wouldn't be able to see it. Then you have rings as well for optics in forests. And if I just click the ones away for open ground, you can see that the M1A1 HA Abrams doesn't really have very good optics. It's normal optics. So against exceptional or good stealth units, it's going to have to be very close in order to spot them. This is a really useful tool for identifying how far your unit can see. So if you have a static recon unit somewhere and you want to see if it's looking into the opposite forest, then this is the tool you're going to want to use. Changes you make to the enemy stealth display will remain on the cursor when pressing C as well. Hunt is useful for if you're moving off-road. Quick hunt is useful for if you're moving on-road. By default, I think the hotkeys are shown here. Hunt is bound to Q. I've rebound quick hunt to my mouse, but you can just hover over all of these to see what key you need to press on the keyboard in order to use them. Also, there is a little tooltip that explains what each of these do. There are some extra orders, like for helicopters, you can tell them to change altitude. You can also tell them to land. So those are useful for certain situations. Land's generally used for resupplying your helicopter, and change altitude is used for hiding behind trees from AA and such. So that's worth noting. There's also for transport vehicles like infantry that come in a transport vehicle, you'll have unload and unload at position commands. Unload at position is really, really important for your infantry. I use it a lot at the start of the game. The way it works is you press Y, or the button, and you click on where you want to take it, that's left click, and then they will drive to that position using roads and then unload. And that's really, really helpful. It gets your units to the front line very fast. Rather than doing like a right-click move command, it will just move slowly across the open ground, and then you'd have to manually click unload. Like unload at position does basically a fast move command and an unload command all in one, which is really, really good. So that's worth knowing. Right, with all that said, you have like the message window here, and there's also engagement rules, but this is more complicated again, so we'll get into that another time. But what you want to do next is go into your options. So press escape, go into your options, sort out your video settings. That's what you're going to want to do. In this case, I'm just like max graphics on my 3080, but depending on the computer that you have, you're going to want to, set up optimal preset or whatever for your computer. And ideally, it should probably auto detect what you have in your system. So hopefully that will be the case. If not, just mess around with it until you find a decent FPS in game, and also double check that once you start the game, because obviously when things start moving around and explosions start going off and so on, it might affect performance as well. So that's always worth double checking. The other thing you're going to want to look at in the options is interface. Now this probably looks a bit confusing here, but icons type is, if you want to use NATO commands or NATO icons, if you're familiar with like Wargaming or whatever, then you can apply that, and what it will do is it will change the icons to NATO icons for future units that are coming in. In the future, after the early access, what they will do is all units will change to NATO symbols straight away. Then we have the armor values. I would recommend keeping these on, as it kind of gives you an idea of penetration values when hovering over enemy units. Very, very useful. Then there's label aggregation. This is very much personal preference. I don't aggregate mine. Aggregation is basically where units, when they're next to each other, you see they kind of like fold up like this. Whereas if I were to go back and change that, don't aggregate, for example, like keeps them kind of like on top of each other, which is kind of hard to read from further away, but it allows you to more concisely see where a unit specifically is. So it's a lot easier to judge. And that's just my opinion anyway. So I don't aggregate my interface options. HUD size is basically self-explanatory. It's like the size of everything around the edge of the screen. So if I go very small, you can see it makes it tiny around the edge. You probably want to keep it like normal. I think normal's fine. Also, it allows you to see all of the options in the bottom right, especially if you're newer to the game. Label size, you're probably going to want to keep a little bit bigger than I have it. I have it on minimal because I'm familiar with the units and the selection and stuff like that. But medium is default, and it's really useful for being able to see. I didn't apply that. Let me just change that back. So we'll do normal and we'll do medium and we'll apply that. There you go. So that's like the normal size of unit stuff. So it makes it a lot easier to see, like, oh, that's a tank and that's the name of the unit and so on. I myself personally have it very small because I think it just like unclutters the screen nicely. You can obviously like copy my stuff here if you want, but just taking you through this so that you guys get like an optimal start to playing WARNO. Label size for multiple selection is affecting the bottom of the screen. So when you have like multiple selected, you can see you get like this at the bottom. So I've got my Abrams selected, my engineer leader, and my engineer dragon squad. You can change the size of that. So many interface options that you're going to want to just make sure that are optimal for you at the start. Then micromanagement for smart groups. So I'm actually not too familiar with that. The close requisition menu, keep open during deployment, is generally what most people do, so you can get all your units down and then you just click on the thing again when you want to grab more units. You can select it to always keep open, and what that would do is like it will only close once you click this back. But if you have it during deployment, then it will stay open during deployment, which helps you get your units down. Then after that, in the interface options, we have display frontline of the opponent. That's useful for in the sectors when you're contesting sectors. We've got unit name, unit scaling I'd probably keep on. Display minimap, of course, you do want that on there. Low violence, that's up to you. And then you've got the other options down here. But these are the most important at the top. So that's what I definitely pay attention to. You can also check out all the controls on the control tab. It's got all of the different keybinds for all of those, so that's important. And you might want to adjust your audio settings, of course. So this is all something that I would recommend doing before like even playing the game. There's also gameplay options, which involves the rules of engagement, which is the window that popped up under the screen, or under the map on the right side. Sticky selection is on by default. It keeps a unit selected after giving an order. Automatic Winchester. What this means is planes will automatically evacuate after using their primary munition. So like bombers, say, coming in will drop their payload of bombs and then they'll automatically leave. Now this isn't always a good thing. For newer players, I would recommend you keep it on for the time being, but if you want to really take the plunge, I would just turn it off, because then you can manually evac your aircraft, and the benefit of doing that is that, say if my bomber came in, dropped its bombs and then decided to evac, if the enemy decided to bring in a plane at that time, it might not be optimal for me to leave in the direction of the evac. So if I don't automatically evac, what I can do is actually fly straight past the plane in front of me, and that will basically mean that they have less time to fire missiles at me, and then I can manually fly my plane further away from the enemy plane and get away, pretty much. Just gives you more micro options to keep your stuff alive. Mousetraps for the screen, of course, and then all of that's obviously self-explanatory. So there you go, that's the gameplay options anyway, which is very important to sort out before you really like jump fully into the game. Right, next thing you want to do is get down the rest of your units. So I'd recommend that you try and cover each of the main roads on the map when you start. So for example, this is a main road, 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 and this is a main road. So you're probably going to want to have like a unit on each one of these roads so that you can see the enemy units that are going to be heading towards you. Now, obviously, because you're going to want to be able to see enemy units, you probably want to use recon. Now, on the recon, at the start of the game, you can, in fact, deploy units in an advanced zone around this sort of square. So far, I've deployed all my units in the initial starting point, which is highlighted in blue here. But if I select a recon unit, you can actually deploy them outside. So what I can do is just pop one of these onto each of the roads. And we're going to, tell them to drive up into the middle of the map. Now, you generally don't want to give commands past the middle of the map because you're going to bump into enemy units. So if I say gave it a fast move command and then it bumped into an enemy unit, it would just kind of like wander through them and ignore them. It might try and fire on the move if it can, but some units like this, for example, I think need to be static in order to fire. Oh, never mind. It says there that you can shoot on the move, so I'm wrong. But regardless, you don't want it to shoot on the move because it's very inaccurate. It's already got only 40% accuracy. So you want it to be sat still because movement does affect accuracy. So what I'm going to do is give these quick hunt orders, and that means that they're going to move fast up the road and then but also attack moves. So if they bump into any troops or enemy forces, they will stop and fire. So again, just giving them all orders to push forwards and take up positions ahead of us. And that will give us information on what's on the road. Just wanted to add a couple of quick advanced tips to do what I just did faster that I always get asked about. The first is selecting a unit and then holding shift, which allows you to left click multiple of the same unit down in one go. Right clicking when you're done putting your troops down, and there you have it. We've got 5 M113A3s. And the second one is using tab to scroll through selections. So we have 5 of the same unit selected here, and you'll see we've got them all at the bottom. If I press tab, it will individually select each unit. And what this allows us to do is quickly give the same order to each different unit. So I'm pressing tab to select the first unit. I'm then pressing the mouse button in order to do a quick hunt command. And then I'm left clicking. And I'm doing that quickly in order to put out these commands. And you can see that when you get a bit of practice, you can do it very, very fast. So I can just spread them out like so. And this is just really, really useful to know when you're playing the game. You can use it in deployment, you can use it when you're actually playing, when you have multiple different units selected. I might also want to see if they're putting helicopters around the outside, so I could also use a helicopter in order to scout those out. And you can see that all of the units I've placed down since changing to the NATO option do have the NATO symbols. Again, if you want to change that back, you can just go into the options, interface, NATO, RTS. RTS is probably easier for those of you guys who aren't like familiar with modern symbols and stuff. So yeah, just bear that in mind. And by default, it's on RTS settings. All right, after you've got like recon units down to kind of scout the front line for you, you probably want to get some infantry units down. On the NATO deck at the moment, the military police are a great one for dotting around because they're very cheap. So you grab a few of these, pop them again on the roads. And you always want to deploy your units on roads because it basically means that they're going to get to the destination as fast as possible. So I'm using these green lines, which are unload at position commands, and they're going to zoom up here and unload into these positions. So we'll just do that. There we go, lovely. So we've got 4 units of military police. They're going to be kind of covering the roads on either side of the map. Now, I do have a bunch of stuff that I placed down at the start. We've got an M1A1 Abrams. We're going to left-click drag that to a better position at the front. And you probably want to place all of your units as far to the front of the deployment as you can to save yourself time. Because at the start of a match, you're going to kind of be in a race with your opponent to gain as much ground as possible. Or at least, like, not necessarily gain ground, but be in a better position than your opponent. You're going to want to put your leader unit that I brought in. So I brought in the engineer leader in this case, whatever leader you chose, whether it be the M577 CPC or the engineers or maybe even the tank. You're going to want to place that in a position that is hidden. So here we're basically in the middle of all the buildings. And if I click unload, what will happen is the engineer leader will jump out of the truck at the start and occupy that building. Continuing to capture the sector. I wouldn't recommend using the M1A1 to capture your base sector. The M1A1 is a very good tank, so it can be used to fight on the front line as well as capture sector. Leaders do also provide a different bonus. They can add +1 veterancy to all units within a white dotted circle around them. So that's what something like the M1A1 would be used for throughout the game. Alright, so you've got your units more or less set up. I'm just going to move my AH-1F forwards. We've also got this artillery piece, but I don't actually need that at the start, so I'm just going to remove it. And instead, I'm actually just going to bring up some engineers with the Dragon. This is Dragon 2 ATGM system. In order to support my M1A1 Abrams in the center of the map, we're going to give them unload at position commands alongside my Abrams. And we're going to select my Abrams and give that a quick hunt command to move forwards as well. All right, so with all that done, the next thing I would recommend getting is some AA. If you are up against the AI, I'm not sure how prevalent they are at using helicopters or aircraft, but basically you're going to want to have your main units covered. So in this case, like a military police unit like this is cheap. So I don't really care if like a helicopter comes along here and kills it. It's annoying, but for now it wouldn't really matter. At the start of the game, the main thing that matters is covering my expensive tank here, my M1A1 Abrams. So that's what I'm going to try and cover. I'm actually going to switch that out for a better tank, which is the M1A1HA Abrams. Now, more points doesn't always mean better. That's another thing I should probably point out. The M1A1 Abrams CP costs more because it's got a command tax. So because it can capture sectors, it costs 100 points more than a normal M1A1 Abrams, even though that's basically what it is. The HA Abrams is actually the best tank that you're going to have here in the default deck. So bear that in mind. All right, so after all that's done, which probably already seems like a lot, you're going to want to launch the battle. So off we go. And as you can see, my engineer has unloaded. Now I still have the line of sight tool on, so we're going to left click that and turn it off. And then there's the M35 here that we can sell. So there is an ability in WARNO to sell your transports, and what this will do is pretty self-explanatory. It will refund the cost of the transport. So that's going to drive on the road, and it's going to just drive off the map. I guess this red line if you've got the orders on. And yeah, it's just going to drive off. My Abrams I forgot to give an order to. I'm sure you guys will find you do that a lot. And then I've got the tow Cobra here as well, also needs a order. But you can see my like sort of line of units here moving up, discovering what we're up against. Super important. And eventually what will happen is we'll bump into enemy units, and I'm just continuing to give them quick hunt orders that moves them a little bit further up every time. And yeah, and eventually we'll bump into a unit like these Conkers, for example, and the UAZ. And my M113 will automatically engage those units. So once my military police have got to their position, they've automatically unloaded because we gave them the unload at position order. And yeah, off we go. Now, the AI has got 2 sectors at the moment, so you can see that they are at a +2 advantage because Alpha is worth 2, Charlie is worth 2, which makes 4, and then we have our home sector, which is worth 2, so they're at a +2 advantage. So what we're going to do in order to stop that from causing us to lose, we're going to bring in our own command to echo, and that will capture that for us. And meanwhile, we are engaging a T-80U. A T-80U is a very strong tank. You can see my Cobra is trying to engage that. My M1A1 is also engaging right now, attacking the Conkers. But say if I wanted to come over here and attack the T-80U, how would I do that? Well, in this case, I can just press Q, and it will give me a hunt command, and my Abrams will move across like so. If it bumps into anything else, or sees anything in line of sight, then it will stop and fire. You can see here, if I hover over the enemy unit, we can see our AP value on our gun, and the enemy armor on the left, and the range, and so on. And it also gives you like a line of sight indicator. So in this case, the blue line is how far we can see. We're obviously blocked by 3 tree lines here, so we're not going to be able to see the BRDM. If I wanted to attack the BRDM, I can right click on it, and my Abrams will basically move as far as it needs to in order to engage. But the smarter option here would be not to move too close to the enemy, but instead come to the side and attack it there, so that we can maintain like a relative distance to the hill here, because this is in fact a hill. Make sure you do study your terrain, so that we can then come around the corner. And an Abrams should very much win against BRDM at close range. It does have an ATGM system, but ATGMs don't do too much damage to a heavy tank in the front armor. Alright, so again, we're at a disadvantage because they own Delta as well as Charlie and Alpha, and we own Echo and our home system. So, our home sector. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a M5 77 CPC again in order to capture Bravo. And the reason I'm selecting the M57 CPC is it's the cheapest command unit that I have, and I don't need a command unit that can fight at the moment.
Someone need a guardian angel?
So they have brought up an Mi-24V, a helicopter there. I'm going to need AA. So my AA are my chaparrals, so I'm going to bring them forwards, and we're going to try and shoot down the Mi-24. The M113 here did retreat. There is actually an option if we just stop again. If we go into options, this rule of engagement is very important. I would, by default, set it to defensive. Defensive is the best one because what it does is if a enemy unit is firing at you from out of the range of your unit will automatically back away from the unit that's firing at them and potentially pop smoke if they have it. So it's very, very useful for keeping your units alive if you're not really paying attention to said unit. So that's what my M113 is doing here right now. I haven't ordered that to retreat, but it's automatically retreating away from the HGM coming in, and you can see that it's just saved its life. Now the BRM is still able to fire at it, and when it fires at it, the M113 will automatically retreat, but I'm going to retreat that manually with a reverse command into cover there. Right, after the game has started anyway, you're going to want to, of course, double check your graphics settings, so do make sure you do that if you're having any problems. But after that, it's pretty much just simple gameplay, just getting used to what counters what. So heavy tanks beat other heavy tanks and pretty much everything else. But they are vulnerable to enemy aircraft and also helicopters, particularly helicopters with ATGMs. Chaparrals are going to be firing at the Mi-24s. You see helicopters obviously vulnerable to AA. So you're going to be able to shoot those down. There are some helicopters that currently outrange AA though, so do be careful. There are always exceptions to the rule, and you'll work those out as you go along. So we're going to move our command into here, and that's going to give us another 3 points towards our total, which is going to put us at a +1 advantage now. We're going to start gaining points for ourselves. If I then go again and bring another command unit into Golf, that will put us to a +3, and so on and so forth. And you get the idea. That's how you win the game. Eventually, you'll reach max score, and that will be job done, and that will be your first game played in WARNO. Just to add, you need to control the sector 100% in order to get points from it. If the enemy is contesting with their own command unit, neither player will get points until they destroy the other's command unit or units in the sector, or if an enemy unit leaves and you have yours in there, then you will capture the sector to 100% and start gaining points. When a sector is contested, a front line will come up, and this will give you a rough idea of which direction to go in order to find the enemy's command vehicle. Just bear in mind, it could be an infantry squad hiding in a building or a vehicle riding around in the forest. They can move, so they will try to evade you. I just wanted to add a little note about aircraft. If you buy an aircraft, what will happen is it will go to the bottom left of your screen. In order to call in an aircraft, you have to left click it, and then you can right click on the map where you want it to head toward. So if I just right click like so, it will wait a little while. You'll see it has this traveling bar that slowly fills up. Once that gets filled, your aircraft will come in. Every aircraft has its own travel time, so make sure to check that. It comes under trajectory at the bottom. So 19-second trajectory for a Thunderbolt 2, 8-second trajectory for a Phantom 2, and 8-second trajectory for a Wild Weasel, and that basically means how many seconds it's going to take for that to come in. So an A10, if I select that and I right click, it's going to take quite a long time before it comes in. So just bear that in mind. If you want to attack an enemy unit, you just have to right click on it. Some units, like in the case of this Wild Weasel, use like anti-radar missiles, and what that means is it can target radar, so it might automatically fire at radar units on the ground. And then you've got like the A10 where you can like specifically right click on things, or it just let it automatically fire. So in this case you can see I'm not giving any of these orders and they're just automatically firing. The aircraft will do the same thing. Specifically when it's targeting things with missiles, it won't automatically engage with its gun, unless its main gun, unless I right click on something. So for example, we saw that Motostrałki over here. If I just speed up the game and we move towards it, I can actually go ahead and right click on it and it will come around and attack that thing. So we'll do the same here with the TATU. Hopefully this M113 doesn't die. Well, it did. So the A10 missed, but it's going to try and gun run where its last known position was. See, the A10 there automatically fired its missile at the UAZ. If I right click the T80, the A10 will come out and find itself a run onto the T80 as well. I'll just speed it up again. It's going to come round and it's going to launch a missile. Now, it just shouted Winchester. It means he's out of ammo. If you have automatic Winchester on, then the plane would automatically leave. In this case I don't. Or in order to evac a plane, you have to click the evac button in the bottom right, or you can press V, which I believe is default, and then your plane will decide to leave, and it will take a certain amount of time to leave. You can see that bar filling in the bottom left again. It's kind of a little bit hard to see, but then after it's left, it will travel back to base, and then it will start refueling, reloading, and that all takes a certain number of seconds before it's then available again. So you can see the wild weasel, it came in, I flew it around a little bit, I told it to leave, and then it's now ready to go again because it's refueled. And that's just a little bit extra that I wanted to say about aircraft. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to play out the rest of the game, and then I'll be back with you in just a second. Alright, so here we are at the end of the game, and what you'll see on this screen is your kills and losses. So how many points worth of units you've killed and how many you've lost, and vice versa for the enemy. The command points currently not working properly in the early access build that I'm showing you this, guys, but may be fixed in the future, so do bear that in mind. But what we're going to do, we're going to exit out of this, and now you've played your first game of WARNO and kind of understand how it works. What you're going to want to do is go back and start to have a look at the Armory. Now, I'm not going to go through everything that's shown in the Armory today, but what I would suggest you do is click through the different units that are available and start to understand the statistics on the right-hand side. After you've done that, go into the battle group tab at the bottom and create yourself a battle group. So in this case, we're going to create a 3rd Armoured Division battle group. I'll quickly go through how this works. Each card uses a certain number of activation points based on which slot it fills. So if I select this MUT CP, it's going to fill the first slot, and that's going to use up 1 activation point out of 50 total in this battle group. If I add another one, it will use up the 2nd slot, another 1. If I add a 3rd unit, it will use up the 3rd slot, and then that will be 2 activation points for that slot. Each tab has its own costs for activation points, and when selecting units, some will have different options. For example, down here at the bottom, you have the ability to set the experience, and if you hover over it, it will give you the effects of said experience. But you will sacrifice availability the higher experience you go. And you can also select your transport. If there are multiple transport options available, they will be available here. It also tells you the cost of your transport. In order to view the transport and the statistics of the transport, you can add them to your deck and then click where it says the name of the transport underneath, and it will bring up a separate tab on the right which gives you the specific information about your vehicle that's going to be transporting your troops. So the idea is to go through your deck, add as many units as you can, use up the activation points, but do try and keep things balanced so that one tab isn't necessarily using all of the points. Eventually you'll get to the point where you have a nice optimized, well-rounded deck. If you want to kind of skip doing this and just keep playing the game, then that's absolutely fine. What you can do is find my battle group codes that will be linked in the description. You can copy them and then click the import button, and what it will do, so for example if I click export, it will copy it to my clipboard. If I click import, it will automatically post the code into the battle group code area, and then you can add a battle group name to it, and that will be a battle group that you can use. So you can just call it whatever you want. So we'll just call it 1. And now if you go into skirmish again, you'll be able to choose that from the list, as you can see. But it's up to you if you want to keep doing skirmish. If you want to jump into multiplayer, I believe ranked does work, so you can try that if you want, or you can create your own lobby, get other people to join you, or join up somebody else's lobby and get deep into the game. Just a couple more things that I wanted to point out. The first is if you click on this button at the bottom, you can see all of the statistics of your account, and you can also change your nickname. And then if you go into solo and click load, you can actually go through here and find your saves for Skirmish, Historical Battles, Army General, and the tutorial, which will eventually be added, but also replays. And this is probably the most important thing for learning the game. If you lose the game and you want to know how, then load up the replay and watch your opponent's perspective and see what they did. It's great to learn from your enemies. So use this tool to great effect. Also, it allows you to zoom in and have a look around without having to worry about gameplay. So a fantastic tool. Just double click on one or click and then click launch in order to view it. And it will load it up into a replay player that you can then fast forward, pause, whatever you want to do with it. But yeah, that's pretty much everything to get you started. If you guys want more information or have any questions, then let me know. But this is kind of like a getting started tutorial specifically for the early access. In the future, later down the line, once things are more settled and things aren't changing all the time, I will make specific tutorials for, you know, going through the menus and getting started again, but also gameplay tutorials and the like, which will obviously change based on, you know, what gets added and maybe different like quality of life features and so on. Now I understand this is probably a lot of information to take in, so do take your time going through the video. Maybe go back and watch certain parts again if you want to, you know, fully understand everything. But I try my best to be concise about all of the different things that you can do in WARNO. There is a lot to learn if you're a very new player. If you're familiar with Steel Division 2, it might come a bit more naturally. I'd say the most important thing that you're going to want to do when you first go into WARNO is setting up those options, and you're going to be able to do most of that by being in a skirmish battle. So yeah, jump into a skirmish, set up your options, play around with it a bit against the easiest AI, and then challenge yourself more as you continue to play and understand the game. That's it from me though. Hopefully you have enjoyed the video. Hopefully it's been informative. If you want to see more WARNO content in the future, of course, make sure to subscribe and check out my Twitch channel where I stream every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Sunday at 8 PM. Again, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.